Right. So now I want to dive into the opposite, which is some sell high targets. These aren't guys that you maybe want to trade right now, but over the next few weeks, they could perform well, but are in threat of potentially losing some of their volume down the road. A lot of these guys might appear obvious, but for some fantasy owners who could see these guys have some really easy or some really good starts to their season, they could, view them as a valuable trade asset. And some of these guys do go in line with the opposite of who we are, buying low on. So the first one is Darrell Henderson. As I said, Sony Michel could very likely be an option to take away a lot of carries at, I think there's a world where they split, the carries throughout the year pretty evenly, but I also think there's a chance that Sony Michel could become the lead back in that offense. But early on, I do think that Darrell Henderson's going to have a really big role. And I think that if he does have a good game or two, just like I did last year, I would sell high on him if you can, because some team who is going to need a running back that might have had Travis Etienne or J.K. Dobbins or somebody like that. If they see a Darrell Henderson have a really big week, they might be willing to trade for him at the peak of his value, where later in the season he might not have the same amount.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier. Yeah, I agree. I feel like he's gonna have a solid couple of weeks, but then you got to worry about the injury bug. And what worries me too is Sean McVay, Cam or not Cam Akers, Sony Michel might not outright win the job, and it may turn into a committee, which as fantasy you never that's what you do not want because gosh, you're just playing a guessing game and hoping and praying, which I know that is part of fantasy, but even doing more so when it's a running back by committee. So yeah, if you can find a good target, good place for Darrell Henderson, maybe another running back, or maybe I don't love to play the handcuff game, but if you have like a Christian McCaffrey or a Dalvin Cook where you invest, you had a top one or two pick, maybe you go get the handcuff just so that you have that insurance because that's what insurance is. Basic concept of insurance is just something you pay for but you don't need until you desperately need it. So if I was a Darrell Henderson owner, which I'm not because that's why I didn't want to be in that quandary. Um, I would try to offload him for something at least because his potential he'd be in the committee.
Yeah, another
What
one,
is
very similar situation. Melvin Gordon out of the Denver Broncos. I think early on he should be the lead guy for Denver. And based on the draft position of both him and Javonte Williams, I think most people are pretty wise to that. But a few weeks removed from the draft, Melvin Gordon's maybe had a few good games. Maybe Javonte Williams hasn't. I think it's a good opportunity to offload Melvin Gordon because I fully expect Javonte Williams to, by at least midseason, take over the starting job and be the lead back of this offense. And also on Monday, Vic Fangio, the head coach, put out a word of confidence in Javonte Williams, saying, "We're not at all against playing him in any situation in any time of the game." And so that means that even in the crucial moments of the game, in any sort of moments, they have the confidence to put Javonte Williams in there. And so I think if you can get, if any moment, Melvin Gordon has a really big game, whether it's this week, next week, whenever, if he does have that sort of game, I think that's the week that you trade him because sort of like Darrell Henderson, there's just somebody waiting in the wings who I think is even more dangerous than Sony Michel to take over his workload.
Yeah, honestly, I would try to get. I mean, you're hoping that he has a good game against Jacksonville next week, Melvin Gordon, because also what worries me about Melvin Gordon as a previous Melvin Gordon owner, injuries just seem to have always been him in the butt and, just been a bugaboo for him, for Melvin Gordon. And then he hasn't always been the greatest pass catcher either. And if they're already trusting Javonte in all three downs, that says a lot. And also, Javonte was a healthy scratch the last preseason game, which you don't typically see unless you're a proven starter. Now, granted, Vic Fangio said that was so that Melvin can get more reps since he had missed the previous two preseason games, but it says a lot that a rookie running back is already cutting, basically going to be a 1A to 1B type situation in Denver. So, yeah, I'm with you. If you can find a target for Melvin Gordon, I would offload him because really, I like. Do you really expect him to be an RB1? I don't think so. I really don't expect him to be an RB1. At best, maybe RB2, but that's at best, and I think those days are past Melvin Gordon personally.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on to the next one. This is a wide receiver. And once again, this sort of goes in tandem with guys that we think you should buy low on. New Orleans Saints, Marquez Callaway, building a lot of hype off of the preseason. I have him right now on my team, and I'm going to be looking potentially to move him if he does have a few weeks where he blows up. I think with the Michael Thomas sort of volume void that is going to be left, Marquez Callaway won't inherit all of it, but he could inherit a good amount. And I think with Jameis Winston's ability to throw the ball deep, we could see him have potentially a big game or two. And I think that that could lead to his value peaking even more than it already has. I think that right now that he's not as high as he could be, but he is a pretty highly touted, sleeper as of right now, just because of, the situation that he's in New Orleans. But Traquan Smith did not play at all in the preseason, and he's been reliable in the past when guys like Michael Thomas have missed time. And I expect him to come back and, challenge Marquez Callaway for, some of that target share that Michael Thomas is going to be leaving. And especially Michael Thomas comes back, I would expect Traquan Smith to be more of the true number two. And then once Michael Thomas comes back, I could see Callaway's, target volume going down significantly. So if he does have a big week, I think that's when you got to trade him.
Yeah, it's tough because it's like Sean Payton, and it's like preseason too. It's always tough to gauge preseason hype and production into regular season. Yeah, especially I might wait on him. Maybe he has a solid week or two to start the season. I was trying to pull up.
That's what I'm saying. I would wait
schedule,
maybe 3 or 4 weeks before you do it. Not too close to when Thomas can come back. You don't want there to be any news leaking out that Thomas is close, because then that might cool off the trade market. But yeah, I think give him a few games, and I think he could have a big game in there, and that's when you might want to move him.
Yeah, I'm trying to see the Saints. There it is, schedule. So yeah, Carolina. You got Carolina week 2. That's when you're really hoping, because after that, you have New England, you have the Giants. Maybe Washington might. And then I will say, though, Seattle week 7, too. That's an opportunity when you hope that maybe he blows up.
But that one could be tough because Thomas might be back at that point. We don't know.
Yeah, so that once again, so you're really hoping that he has a solid week against Green Bay, and then he builds on that week at Carolina the following week. Because after that, like I said, New England, Giants, Washington, they have the bye. Okay, Seattle. But then Tampa, okay, Atlanta, and then Tennessee, who I expect to have a better secondary. And then, to be honest, too, yeah, I mean, Tampa Bay again later. So you have a pretty tough schedule. He might be better too. Yeah, especially Michael Thomas comes back. Like, they have a soft schedule at the end of the year, but like we've mentioned, we expect Michael Thomas and Traquan Smith to be the 1 and 2 for this season. So it's, yeah, you just got to hope that he produces quickly, and then you can cash him in for someone else.
Right. Next is a guy that you're going to know a lot about, and that is your boy Bobby Tonyan. Robert Tonyan, tight end for the Green Bay Packers. I want to read off some stats to you about his last year. And I'm actually someone who sold pretty high on him last year, right after he had that 33-point outing against, I believe, the Falcons. I traded him in a package that landed me Stephon Diggs, which turned out to be a league winner for me. Yeah. Anyway, last year he had 59 targets. He caught 52 of them. Which is a pretty crazy catch rate. He had 586 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns, which is a lot. He averaged a touchdown every 5.3 targets for a ridiculous 18.6 touchdown rate. Those numbers are pretty unsustainable. I think that the addition of Randall Cobb could eat into his value a little bit, because we know that Aaron Rodgers loves Randall Cobb. Devontae Adams is still there. Aaron Jones is still there. I think A.J. Dillon could have an increased role, especially in the red zone. So I'm saying that if Robert Tonyan has another sort of outing like he did last year, where he gets a few touchdowns in a game, that might be the moment to trade him, because he's just one of those touchdown dependent tight ends. And although last year he had 11, I'm not sure he can match that this year. What do you think?
Yeah, he was pretty much a touchdown-dependent tight end last year, like you just mentioned. I'm not confident this year. We do get Josiah DeGuara, who was a third-round pick the previous year. He is coming off ACL injury, so it may take him a few weeks to get in. I was trying to see. Also, Mercedes Lewis is more of a blocking tight end, so he may.
Don't y'all have Jay Sternberg?
That's what I was going to say. I think he's suspended for the first few weeks, though.
But even that might even be better then, because maybe Tonyan has a good game in there, and then that's where you can move him before some of these guys come back.
Yeah, so he's out at least for the first 2 games. And he was a guy I was kind of high on coming in the draft. I know the Packers were. Unfortunately, he hasn't, because he got suspended. That does hurt his chances. But regardless, I mean, have to remember, too, I think Tonyan was a restricted free agent this offseason. And not many other teams were willing to pay him big money. And I think he came back to Green Bay at a pretty low price. I think that says a lot about how NFL teams viewed his production as like we're saying, pretty just touchdown dependent, and it was just more scheme that got him open and such. But so yeah, uh, maybe I'm thinking of my Packers schedule. If you do have him, you're hoping that you do what John did last year and that he has a good few weeks, and then you cash him in, and maybe you'll hopefully like John, you'll steal a Stephon Diggs type player from someone, or maybe not, but close.
All right, and the final player in today's segment is someone who might be a little more controversial because he's a lot higher drafted of an option. This is Josh Jacobs, running back from the Raiders. I'm incredibly concerned about some of his value, especially when it comes to the red zone. I gave that stat earlier about how Cam Newton was a top 5 player if you put his numbers in with running backs when it comes to red zone carries. Guess who 2 of those top 5 were? Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake. I think that Kenyon Drake is potentially an option to steal some of his value when it comes to the red zone. I think Kenyon Drake is a far better player when it comes to receiving. And so I think that he could steal some value when it comes to the passing game. And overall, I worry about Josh Jacobs because he's been, I don't want to say poor, but he's been a little inefficient when it comes to his carries. I'm just going to pull it up real quick because I don't want to misquote it. His rookie year, I believe he averaged 4.8 yards per carry, had over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. Last year, he had more attempts, less yards, but more touchdowns. He had 12 touchdowns. Once again, I think Kenyon Drake could eat into that, but he only averaged 3.9 yards per carry. So his yards per carry did go down. It's still pretty decent. But once again, the Raiders, they lost a guy like Rodney Hudson. There's concerns about their offensive line. Kenyon Drake is the 14th highest paid running back in the entire league, and you don't pay that guy that much money if you're not going to use him. So I have concerns about Kenyon Drake's ability to vulture stats from Josh Jacobs, and overall, Josh Jacobs, he's a bit frustrating fantasy wise because he can be inconsistent too at times. Like one game he'll go off for 3 touchdowns, the next he'll get 0 and like 60 yards, and he's just. I feel like they run him into the ground, and so there's potential for injury.
Yeah, someone who also had Josh Jacobs his first 2 years. The concerns are real. I wouldn't jump ship necessarily yet. I because also I think it's important to remember Kenyon Drake was the lead already, the one back at Arizona. I think he's going to obviously coming as a 2. I will agree he's definitely going to eat in, or not probably, he's definitely going to eat into the passing production, receiving production. But what you're hoping for as a Josh Jacobs owner really is that the passing game evolves with more than just Darren Waller. You hope that Henry Ruggs takes the next step so that the running lanes are more open for Josh Jacobs. I think that was more of the issue. And then on top of the fact that John is right, I mean, at times he was getting 30 carries a game, and John Gruden just didn't care because he wasn't too entirely confident in the receivers to get open, not necessarily Derek Carr, which led to Josh Jacobs having shoulder issues and just other nagging injuries he's had this first 2 years. So I would say if it depends on what you're getting, what you're able to sell him for. But he is definitely, I would say, someone to proceed with caution with in my eyes. Especially keep an eye on the snap count and all that, or percentage, and how much of the carries he's getting for a few weeks, or even just so that if it definitely looks like Drake's cutting more and more into his workload, then get rid of him. But once again, just depends on the price that you can sell him for. But definitely proceed with caution. Even though I like Josh Jacobs, it's tough.
Yeah, and I wouldn't sell him right away. The tough part is too, they do start off with some rough defenses: the Ravens, the Steelers, the Dolphins, the Chargers, the Bears, the Broncos. That's their first string of games. Some good run stuffing defenses in there. But I think about mid-season, maybe that's where you can start to see some of his values start to go back up before playoff time. He's got the Eagles, then the Giants, the Chiefs, Bengals, Cowboys. That sort of stretch right there feels like that could be the opportune moment to trade him, because
or to trade for him if you need a running back, and maybe Kenyon Drake is dinged up then, and the Josh Jacobs owner, like we expect, is not very happy with his production. Could swoop in, get a low value. He could be your RB4 3 and turn into like a 2 or 3 with luck.
Yeah. The tough part for me there is then after that stretch, once we get towards fantasy playoffs,
Yeah.
you got Washington, you got Cleveland, you got Denver, you got Indianapolis. Not all amazing at run stuffing, and you do have the Chiefs mixed in there as well. Not all amazing at run stuffing, but like those last two games, that could be your fantasy championship playing Denver and Indianapolis. Those are two teams that are very good against the run. And so I think that his late season value come playoff time could be a little bit,
Yeah.
it could hurt you because at that point you can't get rid of them. And you know, that's make it or break it. That's when you got to win your fantasy championship. And so, yeah, those are my list of buy low, sell high as of right now, guys, to keep an eye on. I'm sure this will be updated, you know, occasionally as we go throughout the season.
Yeah. All right. So, and now last point I wanted to make too is if at very worst he could at least be a flex for maybe the week he plays the Chiefs.
Sure.
Like he's just more of a he could be a solid depth guy in case you have a bad matchup with one of your other guys at that point. Because if you made the championship, obviously you have a solid roster. So hopefully
This is true.
he's just an add-on. But otherwise, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. That is week one. That's our picks. That's some of our fantasy stuff that we've been doing. We'll be back probably Tuesday, Wednesday next week. We'll be back next week after the games. Review some of the bigger games, and we'll be back with a segment too. You know, trying to add in some segments here with some of our. We'll probably pick our offensive and defensive players of the week, both of us, things like that or something of that sort. But regardless, hope everyone enjoys our first football weekend. The only thing that sucks about doing this on Tuesday is like now I got to wait 2 more days for football. But on the bright side, we're only 2 days away from football starting, and then we have obviously 2 more days between, and then we have football again. So very exciting stuff. Hopefully, as I mentioned before, your fantasy, everything's going well. If you've already drafted, and best of luck week one, everyone, for you and your teams. Unless you're a New Orleans Saints fan, sorry. I do not wish you the best of luck. So,
or a Bucks fan, you guys suck.
Yeah, unless you're a real Bucks fan, then
well, you don't suck, but I want your team to lose.
If you're a real Bucks fan, you suck less. But if you're a bandwagon Bucks fan, you suck more. That's the philosophy there. But everyone enjoy your weekend, the first weekend of football, and we'll see y'all next week.